studios in New York City, this is Charlie Rose.
We begin this evening with politics. In an open letter to state Democrats, Governor Jerry Brown of California endorsed Hillary Clinton for president today ahead of the state's Democratic primary next week. Meanwhile, the presumptive Republican presidential nominee, Donald Trump, held a news conference to address his pledged donations to veterans groups.
I have raised a tremendous amount of money for the vets, almost $6 million, and more money is going to come in, I believe, over the next little while, too. But I've raised almost $6 million. All of the money has been paid out, and I'm going to give it to you in a second. In fact, I brought a list just in case that question was asked. But the money has been paid out. I have been thanked by so many veterans groups throughout the United States. One gentleman called me up recently crying that out of the blue he got a check for $100,000. But I have been thanked by so many groups, great veterans groups. And by the way, outside you have a few people, they're picketing. They're sent there by Hillary Clinton, and they're picketing that the money wasn't sent. The money's all been sent. I wanted to keep it private. If we could, I wanted to keep it private because I don't think it's anybody's business if I want to send money to the vets. But I have to say this. I raised close to $6 million. It'll probably be over that amount when it's all said and done. But as of this moment, it's $5.6 million.
In a tweet, Trump criticized a potential independent run by another still unknown presidential candidate. His comments were in response to a Twitter announcement by Weekly Standard editor Bill Kristol, who said there will be an impressive contender with a real chance. Meanwhile, a new poll by Associated Press and Center for Public Affairs Research found that Republican and Democratic voters feel a significant disconnect with their political parties. Joining me here in New York is Frank Luntz. He is a political pollster and a contributor to Fox News and CBS News. From Washington, D.C., Gerald Saib. He is the Washington bureau chief of the Wall Street Journal. And Jonathan Martin, he is the national political correspondent at the New York Times. I am pleased to have all of them here. Let me just begin with this question, Jerry, for you. And Trump's performance today at this press conference. Yeah. Well, what did he achieve?
Well, he achieved an attack on the press, which, particularly for a Republican candidate, is never a terribly bad idea. And he managed to take the oxygen out of the room one more time. I mean, it was really remarkable that the press conference and the controversy that he was addressing might have been a problem for some other politician. Maybe it's a problem for him as well. But the one thing that happens every time he goes out of the box like this is he takes the attention away from everybody else. And the whole day was spent discussing and parsing Donald Trump and the veterans question. And, that's worked for him. Now, maybe at some point it won't work, but right now it works for him.
All the questions answered?
No, no, not really. But that wasn't the point. The point was to take offense at the fact that the questions had been raised at all. I mean, that was kind of the posture that was taken. And I think some of the journalists who were there and others beyond the room were somewhat agog at that, because isn't that the point of journalism, is to ask questions and demand answers?
He wants to make it about,
want to be president of the United States.
Jonathan?
He wants to make it about the media instead of his contributions or lack thereof to veterans groups, or frankly, whatever the story of the day is. It's his posture is to sort of create a fresh dust-up to cover the previous one, and he's very talented at that. I will point out that this press conference took place, I believe, 3 days after Donald Trump at a rally in San Diego complaining about the federal judge who is presiding over the lawsuit that has been filed against Trump University. At that rally, Mr. Trump invoked that judge's ethnicity, saying, I believe he's a Mexican. By the way, this judge obviously is an American. He's a federal judge. But it's remarkable that the nominee for president of the Republican Party can mention in a sort of casual manner the ethnicity of a federal judge in that kind of a way. And at a press conference 3 days later, he just makes it all about, veterans groups or about the press themselves, and we all just kind of move on from that comment. But it does capture the degree to which Trump is able to sort of create some new story and sort of put to rest the previous one.
Well, then is the press at fault?
I think that the press has to be aggressive in holding him accountable for the things he says, and we can't just move on from the last controversy to address what he is saying now, and we can't be so consumed by his attacks on the press itself to stop ourselves from holding him accountable for some of these things that he's saying.
So what will they do about the money question and when the veterans got it and how much money was actually raised and why wasn't it sent early, if in fact those are the facts?
Well, I think you'll see accountability. You know, for example, the Washington Post has done a great job on this question about his giving to veterans groups, and I think you'll see more accountability on that fact. But, you know, unfortunately, at these press conferences, we get so caught up in sort of other issues that he's able to kind of steer the conversation.
The roots of this of this whole controversy are pretty simple. Reporters starting months ago, did what they do, which is they started calling up veterans organizations and say, "Have you seen the money yet?" And a lot of them said, "No, we haven't." Yeah. It's not a grand conspiracy theory here at all.
Of course not.
So why wasn't the money sent?
Well, you know, that's one of the questions that's not been answered. It's let's just say it's taken a while, but you know, that's, again, as Jonathan suggests, that became not the point anymore as of today.
Well, you go ahead, Frank.
He's holding press conferences. Is Hillary Clinton? How often does the media actually get to her? And this is one of the smart things that Trump has done, which we haven't seen in a candidate, which is that he actually gives the press access to him. He does more interviews in a week than Hillary Clinton does in a month. He opens himself up. Not to agree with you, because you're trying to hold him accountable. But the fact is, at least he gives access. And once again, it's the Trump show. And the average voter gets a chance to see this exchange. And what's happening is that they're deciding that the fact that he lets the press at him, that's what builds his credibility. And if you watch what's happening, even though he's still only got about a 35% favorability rating, more and more people are considering voting for him because he seems authentic. He seems genuine.
He seems to have an attitude.
And it's an aggressive attitude, but the public is looking for that. In the work that we did, it's going to be released in the LA Times. We did a survey in the swing states, and we have identified none of the above. It's an 11% component of the electorate, and I fundamentally believe they will determine the election. And they're not responding to issues, Charlie. They're responding to attributes. And the one attribute they want more than anything else is a candidate that is honest and trustworthy. They believe that Trump isn't. They believe that Hillary Clinton isn't. But the fact that Trump allows people to get at him and goes back and forth with them, that creates an essence of authenticity that Hillary Clinton doesn't have.
And also, I assume it creates not only authenticity, but also a sense of transparency.
Which is what voters are looking for. And I have never said publicly that I thought Trump had the chance to win. I now believe, and it's going to frighten many of your viewers, I now believe he genuinely does, because her campaign is as inauthentic as anything I've seen. And Trump, and he's going to have to get people who don't like him. But those people are going to give him a chance that they would not give Hillary Clinton. And the Clinton people have to wake up right now.
Okay, I'll come back to what the Clinton people have to do. Both to Jerry and Jonathan, I mean, do you think what Frank just said is increasingly becoming part of the conventional wisdom that Trump can, in fact, win this thing? Or not?
Yeah, I think so. And, you know, we've taken looks at states where that could come into reality. I mean, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Ohio, you know, states where he has the chance to turn what had been a blue state, a blue state into a red state in a way that another more conventional Republican probably didn't, or Ted Cruz probably didn't. Now, is it going to happen? No, but is it possible? Yeah, I think people are realizing it's possible.
Yeah, and Jonathan, you just did a survey in the New York Times, you and a colleague, looking at 4 states, I think, including my own North Carolina.
Right. There's no question that, you know, our reporting and the data that we're seeing reflects a competitive race, and that Mr. Trump is going to be, you know, more formidable than perhaps many folks had thought a few months ago. But two things. First of all, structurally, the map works against any Republican nominee, whether it's Trump or anybody else. Democrats have an advantage on the map. Since 1992, Charlie, Democrats have won about 242 electoral votes from the same states. Right. Now, Trump is claiming he could change that. He can sort of throw out the old map, but that's a daunting place to start for any Republican nominee. Second, I would point out, keep in mind, Hillary Clinton has not secured the nomination yet of her own party. Once that happens, the polling will presumably look different, just as it did in 2008 after the Obama-Clinton race finally came to an end and Democrats came home. The Republicans have coalesced around Trump for the most part at this point. The Democrats have not around Hillary.
And will they is the question.
Well, if you look at the data, more Democrats in 2008 were hesitant about supporting Obama, who had backed Hillary in the primary, than those are now who are for Bernie with regard to Hillary. this fall. So it sure seems possible, and there's no question that there's bad blood right now in this Democratic primary. The Sanders folks are very uneasy about Hillary Clinton and her campaign and the broader Democratic establishment. But I think you're going to see a 4 to 5 month sustained Democratic campaign warning those Bernie people that the alternative is Trump.
Right.
And that's probably their most compelling weapon.
And Supreme Court appointments and all of that.
Absolutely.
It is a change election. And we haven't seen a change election like this, really, going back to 1980. And I think that's 2008, 1980, so twice in the last 45 years. And there are Sanders people that we are finding in our focus groups where Donald Trump is their second choice. And they acknowledge that.
Is that a significant factor?
In
other words, is it a few or is it a significant number?
Let's say it's 10% of the vote. That's all it took. Ralph Nader got 1% of the vote in 2000, and that flipped Florida for Bush over Al Gore. So all it takes, Gary Johnson, the independent, the libertarian candidate, these numbers are so small, these differences between Trump and Clinton, and we've had this in this country for a long time now, that nobody wins by 20 points as they did 20, 30 years ago. Right. I do think it's significant, and these Sanders people want to shake up Washington and Wall Street, and Hillary Clinton is not in position to get that type of voter.
All right, let me raise one quick question here with all of you. This notion that Bill Kristol said over the weekend, I guess, that it could be a third-party candidate. Do you guys see that as likely? Do you know what he's talking about? And does he know what he's talking about?
I think it's likely something's going to happen. In a way, we have a third-party candidate already. You were just talking about Gary Johnson, the Libertarian ticket. And that, it doesn't take, as Frank said, it doesn't take much to tip the balance here. I think it's hard to start from scratch right now and launch a meaningful independent presidential campaign. That's a tough thing. But the Green Party's on ballots and the Libertarian Party's on ballots. This might be a place where those none of the above voters migrate in this year. It's such a strange year. That's possible.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, I think it's possible that they could find somebody to run third party. Keep in mind, it's too late to be on the Texas ballot, pending any kind of litigation that will be filed. And we're getting close to the line in North Carolina. So whoever would run would have to gather signatures pretty quickly here to get on some of these ballots. But as Jerry said, if you're a Republican who's just looking for somebody that's not named Trump or Clinton, you already have an option. Gary Johnson and Bill Weld were both governors in the 90s, Republican governors in the 90s. And even if you don't think that they're going to be president, that is at least somewhere where you can go if you're a Republican to cast a protest vote of some kind. Mm-hmm. And as Frank pointed out, if the Johnson-Weld ticket got 6-7% in some states, that's a very significant number, given how close this election could well be.
And Mike Bloomberg could have been that candidate. And I think he made a miscalculation. Bloomberg believes that he would have taken more votes away from Clinton than Trump, and that's why he said he didn't do it. Yeah. I believe in the polling that we did that he would have taken equal or even more votes away from Trump.
And he would therefore have kept anybody from getting 270.
Yes, and he himself would have started in the mid-20s, upper 20s. That makes him a viable candidate. He had the money, he had the message, he had the background, he had the experience. He could have done it.
And he could have been in a debate if he had 20%.
Exactly. And that would have made this a very different race. But he chose not to do it. I don't think it's significant.
Okay, but is Bill Kristol talking about Mitt Romney or not? Does anybody know who he's talking about?
It's not going to be Romney, I don't think. I've done some reporting with Romney's people, and they indicate that he's still very reluctant to do this. Now, look, his mind could be swayed, but there's not a lot of time left here, Charles. I mean, they are up against the wall here on a lot of these state ballots.
And he's not the right guy for this time.
Okay, who is it then?
It would have to be someone who was...
Other than Gary Johnson.
It would be someone like a
Bill
Ben,
Weld.
Or someone like a Ben Sasse, who's already said he would not do it. The senator from Nebraska, smart, tough, very quick on his feet, and the ability to express frustration with the current system. But that's not Mitt Romney.
Does what the governor of California did today, a popular governor, Jerry Brown, in endorsing Hillary Clinton's this sort of rise of Bernie Sanders in leading up to the primary on Tuesday?
He's a popular governor. He's a successful governor, is seen that way in California at least. The endorsement was a little tepid. It said basically, well, we should be for Hillary Clinton because she's got the best chance of beating Donald Trump, and that's the imperative, but I sure like that Bernie Sanders guy. But in the California context, I think that that may be enough. Endorsements tend not to matter very much, and we tend to overrate them, I think. But this case, this guy, I think probably does make a difference.
And the timing is nice, too. And at a moment where Bernie had spent a lot of time there and it seemed to be creeping up in the polls, it does help Hillary a little bit. And, you can't say that, Jerry Brown's part of the Clinton establishment. Goodness knows Jerry Brown, of all people, has had his differences with the Clinton family over the years.
But what does it say? I mean, think about it. What does it say that Bernie Sanders cannot win the nomination? No shot. And yet he is pulling closer and closer to Hillary Clinton with the election over.
What does it say? That's a very good question.
And
what does it say? It's unhappiness with her.
It's more than unhappiness. It is genuine discontent. And Donald Trump is unable to close that deal, which is why these debates are going to be the most incredible television. I have got to buy the pay-per-view rights. Charlie, you and I together should get global pay-per-view because there will be billions of people tuning in to see a Trump-Clinton fight.
All right.
I am all for the hype, but let's see what the numbers look like this summer after Democrats come home for Hillary first.
I was just going to say, Frank, I think one possibility here is that to be for Bernie Sanders now, because he can't get the nomination, is a bit of a free throw for some of these Democratic voters. They can vote for Bernie. They can make a statement. They know it's not really going to matter in the end because Hillary's going to get the nomination. So nothing lost there, except you get to make a better statement.
Everybody's trying to explain 2016, including you, Jerry. This is what you say in today's Wall Street Journal. The search for an explanation of this year's bizarre political climate leads to a basic conclusion. The recession that started in 2007 and the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009 scared the electorate more deeply and more permanently than has been recognized before. Yes, the economic statistics say there has been a recovery, a relatively nice one at that, but mentally, many Americans have never really recovered and perhaps never will. The experience has altered their attitude about the political and economic systems and their leaders and left them willing to consider risky alternatives. Tell me more, because I think that's exactly what Frank's polling is telling him. Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, there are these divergent lines. There's this line that says the economic recovery is underway. There has been 6 years of economic growth, and there have been 74 straight months of job creation. While those lines moving up, the line that says we think the country's off on the wrong track has been going down. The line that in our polling that says, do you think the economy is going to get better? It keeps going down. And so there's this gap between what the economy is supposed to look like and what people actually feel. And I think the gap is explained in part by the fact they think what happened in 2007, 2008, and 2009 showed a system that didn't work. At least it didn't work for them, and they haven't forgotten that. And the numbers on, say, things like GDP growth don't change that view.
49% of Americans think our best days are behind it. When have you ever known Americans to be that pessimistic about the future? 2/3 of Americans believe that the problems that we face today will get worse over the next 10 years rather than getting better.
So Trump was right to frame it in terms of making America great again?
Incredibly, yes, because he captured the emotion and the passion. He is their voice. He is the vessel by which they communicate, and that's why they will ignore all these weaknesses.
He can say whatever he wants to do about John McCain. They forgive him for that, even on Veterans Day.
And I got that wrong. I thought his comment about John McCain would have killed it for him.
Yeah.
And it didn't. And nothing seems to kill him up to this point.
Well, let's see what happens with a broader electorate, though, first. I mean, his numbers are terrible. He has the worst unfavorable numbers, Frank, of any major party nominee in American history. So it's not like he hasn't been hurt. He has been hurt. He just hasn't been hurt with a slice of the Republican electorate.
So why is Hillary Clinton not destroying him at this point?
Because she has bad numbers, too. She's very unpopular.
But that's
and
my
because
point.
Her primary is going on still, and so Democrats haven't come home yet. And it's pretty straightforward.
And that's why the none of the above, that 11%
Okay, but let me ask you this, Jonathan. I mean, you assume in what you just said that Democrats will come home because they'll look at the alternative and they'll say, even though I'm not thrilled by her, I'm less thrilled by the possibility of Donald Trump winning.
Yeah, the alternative, it's the old Joe Biden saying, I think, which he cites to Kevin White, the former mayor of Boston, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. And that's going to be the Hillary message for the next 5 months. Yes, Bernie, folks, you don't love me. Perhaps I'm part of the establishment, but the alternative is Donald J. Trump. And I think that's going to be their message. Again, look at the polling data versus 2008, where you had more people then who were backing Hillary Clinton who said, I will never vote for Obama, than now you have of the Bernie folks who will say the same about Hillary Clinton. So it does seem like we have to wait until this summer to feel what's going to happen in this race based upon what the Democrats do after their primary.
Jonathan, it seems to me like you were saying, look, Hillary Clinton's going to be okay. They may not like her, but when push comes to shove, Democrats are going to come home.
She still has a narrow advantage based upon the makeup of the country's electoral college, which now favors Democrats, and frankly, the fact that Donald Trump's numbers are terrible. Hers aren't much better, but they're not much better while her own primary is going on still. So I think it's just not wise to make the sweeping analysis about the race until we know what happens after her primary is over.
It's actually the opposite. I'm unwilling to make that analysis. I don't think we should be comparing this to any other election because it isn't like any other election. The voters have a different mindset today than they did even in 2008. And every time that we've made an assumption on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, so many media people, so many pundits have got it wrong that at some point you actually stop making projections, you stop comparing it to the past, and you let the voters speak for themselves.
Jerry, final word to you. Often when you look at presidential elections, people will say, well, it's a debate about the future. Some will say it depends on who wins the debate. Some will say it depends on who's, in the end, the most optimistic candidate. Some will say it depends on who it's a referendum on. Help me understand what this election will be about.
Well, first of all, I share Frank's view that I'm just about out of the projection business for this year, but for starters. But
I was asking for understanding, not a projection.
Okay, I'll give you that. I think a strange dynamic here suggests itself that, the question of how many people want to vote against Hillary Clinton stacked up against how many people want to vote against Donald Trump is in a way the way this race is going to be decided. You have negatives like we've never seen before, as we've been discussing. I think a big question, and this is the one Jonathan raises, how much of the Democratic Party consolidation will happen? And I do think we'll have a pretty fair reading of that in a few weeks, and that'll give us a baseline from which to proceed. But there's going to be a record number of people voting against the other guy this year, and that's a giant joker in the deck, I think.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks,
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you, Frank. Jerry, thank you.
Sure. Happy to do it.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.